people of the internet, it's Amanda in 4 days of video. So I'm back. I'm here to talk about F4 Thailand episode 8, 9, and 10. So I'm talking about it in bulk because in my other video I talked about how I really wanted to take a break and almost dropped this series because of the events of episode 7. If you want to know what happened, you can just check out that video. But I also talked about maybe in the future I would pick up on it again just to see if the story goes a lot better and stuff like that. And I do have a couple of thoughts that I want to share about episodes 8, 9, and 10 that I'll be discussing in today's video, so that's why we're having this. But before that, real quick, so I just want to address something that a lot of you guys have been recommending to me. So given my reaction to episode 7, a lot of you recommended this particular video analysis, I think it's a channel. I didn't check it out for the reason that I want my viewing experience of this series to be to not be influenced by any other opinions at the moment. I feel like I would check those out after I watch the series, and the reason for that is because I want to view this series in a way without any deep analysis from another person or another group of people about certain themes, and I just want to view it as a viewer who has seen the other versions as well. So for me, I want it to be a fresh experience. I don't want to have any other notions other than the fact that my own observations when it comes to how the series is going, because I feel like if I watch a deep dive of it and then another person exploring the themes of the series in their own perspective, it might affect my viewing experience and therefore my opinion of the series. And again, this one, I just want it to be a reaction, my own reaction to what I'm watching, the same way that I'm asking for you guys to share your opinions in the comments as well so that I can check them out. So for me, it's more of not really a deep dive of the series, why I'm doing these videos, but more of just sharing a reaction to it as a normal viewer. So yeah, I hope that makes sense, but that's a reason why I haven't been reacting to comments saying that I should check out a video and stuff like that. So yeah. Now, with that said, so let's just get to it. I mean, surprisingly, I do have a couple of good things as well as a couple of bad things to say about episodes 8, 9, and 10. So gear up and let's just go ahead and do it. Episode 8 started off with the confrontation between Thyme's mom and Gorya's family, and this scene is so iconic in the other versions because it established that balance between, at the end of the day, no matter what the social statuses are or the class difference is, parents will always be parents. And I think that was the entire parallel of the symbolism of that particular scene for this entire franchise. We always just see the parents of the female lead to be very easygoing and happy-go-lucky and stuff like that. But even then, we also see how at the end of the day, the female lead's mom is still there for the well-being of her child. It's not just they always joke around about, their girl clinching a rich guy and stuff like that, but in that particular moment, there is a level of sincerity, no matter how comedic that scene is in the other versions, that at that moment, the mom was insulted for her child, and that's why she did what she did. Now, in this particular version, I honestly felt kind of iffy as to how they played it out, because instead of it having that kind of symbolism between parent to parent, it became more of a showdown between Thyme's mom and Gorya. The way they had that back and forth at the beginning, and it actually kind of got stale after a while because it's taking so long for the payoff to happen, where Gorya's mom stood up and asked for Thyme's mom to leave, and that entire speech and everything. It was funny in a way, but again, it already got stale to that point given how long the conversation was between Gorya and Thyme's mom. I do feel like again, this series, one of its weaknesses is it doesn't know when to stop talking sometimes. Like, it has to show more than to tell us something, which I'll be discussing more in like later on into the video with some other scenes. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely one of this series' weaknesses is that sometimes it just keeps on just talking and talking and talking, that it misses its mark when it comes to when it has to deliver a certain punch for a scene to have a bigger impact. So yeah. Now, another thing that I didn't like about this series of episodes, I couldn't really keep track which episode that was, but given what happened with when Thyme learns about what his mom has been doing to Gorya's family, he moves in next door and tries to be there for Gorya since Gorya's parents moved to the countryside, because it's a lot easier to just work there as compared to the city where they're basically being blocked from working, and her dad was laid off and stuff like that. But what I didn't like was that part where Thyme was talking to the rest of the F4 members, and he admitted to manipulating Gorya to earn points from her, saying that he's trying to make it seem like he's doing all these hard things, but then at the same time, like, I don't know, I think that scene just didn't sit well with me, even if it's meant for like a comedic type of moment since Gorya caught him and stuff like that. And I think the reason for that is because if there's definitely one thing about the male lead in like the other versions, he does all these like childish things that are sometimes ridiculous, but he's brutally honest about how he's doing it. Like for Domyoji, he bought the swanky old building that Chukushi was living in, but he was pretty honest about the living conditions, and that he said that he's still very open about the fact that he's still going about his rich kid things. It's just that he bought the building and was there for the protection of Chukushi. There was no other pretenses of him like sneaking out and then pretending to do the laundry, but then having it to send in a home, and having a security detail everywhere and stuff like that. So but Gorya doesn't know that, so she would think that I'm doing this. So I didn't like how they shaped that entire scene. I think for me, like the male lead, if there's one good thing about him, no matter how annoying and toxic his character is for the other versions, he was always upfront about and sincere about his feelings when it comes to the female lead. And he's always almost very blunt and honest when it comes to her, that even the silliest things that he does for her, he tells her. And that particular moment was kind of like an off thing for me in terms of the characterization, because again, it would just add more to the charm that he still does all these things, but he chooses to live here instead of his mansion. Like, it's obvious that he couldn't adjust, but he could just be honest with her and tell her that the security details, like basically so I don't know how you interpret that scene. Like, I get that, again, I get that it's funny. It's just that I don't know, I just didn't like that they included that scene. I feel like they could have made that entire thing without that moment. So yeah. Anyways, if moving to some positives that I like about that particular episode, one thing that I like is that scene where the F4 was just hanging out in that house that Thyme was living in, and he cooked them instant noodles, and then they got engrossed in a TV show. I feel like I really like those small moments where we're really establishing that the F4 are just also boys, friends, hanging out. Another thing that in relation to that is I feel like this series is really good in terms of establishing the relationship between Thyme and Ren as friends, that even in the F4 they are the ones who are a lot closer to each other, which is something that we never really saw in detail in like the other versions. So I feel like in terms of establishing Thyme and Ren's friendship, this series has that one right. Like, they really show some small moments between them that prove that they show this different side to each other that makes them best friends. So that's one thing. Another thing that I like that thankfully they didn't overdo or they didn't put in like a punchline to ruin the scene was that thing in Thyme's birthday, like when they were counting down to his birthday and it was just him and Gorya, and he wanted her to be the first thing that he sees when he turns to a different age. And I really like how they did that scene, because it was the first time that I actually felt like this is a romance drama, which is kind of weird because, again, in the other episodes, like, they usually, every time there's a build-up of like an emotional moment between the two of them, it's always ruined with like a punchline or a weird score or something like that. But for this one, they did the birthday thing moment right. Like, I absolutely love how that scene was filmed, how that scene was built up. It didn't have a lot of like dialogues. It just let the acting of both actors do its job. And I don't know, I just really like that whole POV moment of what Thyme was seeing, and then Gorya was just there smiling, and it was just a simple moment, and I absolutely love that they didn't ruin that particular moment. So again, I wish that moving forward we get more scenes like that where it's a lot more simpler. Like, again, the series has a problem when it comes to not knowing when to stop talking. And in that scene, they did control it so well. Like, that scene was really well done. Now, moving past that, so we also get introduced to Lita, which is the fiance of Thyme. I also like how, as compared to like the other versions, Lita and Thyme's relationship was kind of like chaotic, but it wasn't as toxic as like the other version. So they still make it seem like they're just very childish towards each other. But I like how Thyme wasn't hostile to her in a very violent manner, which I absolutely like in this particular version. I feel like they did well in terms of that. I think the only thing that puts me off is, again, they post Thyme as this type of character, so I kind of wish that they don't revert him back into a different kind of asshole in a way after everything that we've seen. Because, again, this series has a tendency to ruin Thyme's character in ways that I personally couldn't understand. Like, they built him up to have this level of development, and they kind of ruin it after a couple of episodes. So I hope, again, case in point, episodes 1 to 6 and then episode 7 happen. So I wish that they don't do that for like the remaining episodes for the series. But yeah, I like how with Lita, he's still very human. That scene between like when Gorya was breaking up with him, saying that with Lita you don't have to try. I feel like Tu really carries this series really well. Like, I always like her whenever there are dramatic scenes, and I feel like it's not her fault that some of her dialogue is sometimes too much. Like, sometimes Gorya, you have to like just stop talking because I feel like that's more in terms of the direction and the script writing. But when it comes to moments when she has to deliver like really emotional scenes, I really like Tu a lot. I feel like, again, she's the star of this series. She carries it really well, and I absolutely love her. And in contrast to that, I feel like Bright should keep up with that, because every time Thyme has to do something emotional, I just couldn't feel anything. And it's just a good thing that the person that he's acting opposite with, like, for example, that I forgot who, but that girl who pretended to be Gorya's friend who was after Thyme, like that one, that girl also carried Hana carried that scene more so than Thyme, and I think that's more on like Bright's end why it turned out like that. But yeah, again, I feel like Bright should keep up in terms of acting, especially when it's emotional, because the girls are really just grinding it and just really owning the scenes, and I'm just not feeling any type of intensity when it comes to Bright's acting as Thyme in those moments. So yeah. Now, when it comes to Talay, so this storyline is kind of like funny to me, because the first time or the first couple of moments we get introduced to Talay, we already know that something is happening because of the scoring. And I'm not sure if I'm the only one who noticed it, but I feel like this there's something about the writing, the directing, the production of it that just messed it up for me, because even if you've seen the other versions, of course you still want to get that suspenseful build up of the scene. But for him, the scoring, like he has his own scoring with it's so eerie, even if he's not saying anything suspicious at all, and you just kind of know that something's up. And that's not how you do foreshadowing when it comes to dramas. Like for example, for Hana, they sort of like foreshadowed her vengeful plot in a way, but still not that good. Like it lacked a little bit of like, where did that come from moment. But for Talay, they're just trying to like push it, and they could have done it in a way that, you know, it doesn't feel like it's out of the blue, but at the same time you just kind of have this sense of getting caught off guard as well. Another thing is in terms of the anti-F4 group, like Ren, MJ, and Kavin kind of like figured it out because of the whole like people who are against the F4 kind of thing. But I wish that they could have build that up in the earlier episodes, where there are certain things of like, I don't know, we get a mention of this anti-F4 group in passing in like a couple of series, and they could have done like a couple of things trying to expose the F4 and stuff like that, or anything, just so the build up for this particular scene would have made sense a lot more. But what I like actually was in terms of Ren, like how they did Ren for that moment when he was rushing to Gorya. I also like how the three mean girls were there to sort of like, they were having this moment where they want to help out or something like that, because again, it differentiates them being mean to Gorya in a way. Like, it doesn't justify them being mean to her, but it proves to show that there are different levels of these kinds of things, and there are some things that just go too far, that is too much even for a person or for people who are like that. And I like that distinction, and I like that they put that in this particular series. Now going back to Ren, I like how Ren, as compared to his other iterations, and I've said this in my previous videos, it gives Ren a lot more dimension, more so than Thyme, which is kind of like amusing. That's why at this point I'm really more interested in like the other characters other than Thyme, which is kind of sad because he's a male lead, but I just couldn't care less about the character at the moment because I'm not getting anything from him. Like for Ren's character, you really see there's sort of like this buildup of emotions in terms of how he's worried about Gorya, and then he's the sudden realization, he runs off, that kind of look on his face when he sees when he saw what happened to her. So I kind of really like that. And again, I'm really not into like the whole like second lead syndrome kind of like thing as compared to like other people. Even for this particular franchise, I've seen almost all of the versions. Couldn't really care less about the whole like second lead syndrome dynamic that they have for the second male lead's character. But for this one, it just really makes a lot more sense. And I feel like that has to do with the acting and the delivery and how they changed up the dynamic for Ren's character. So yeah. Now, when it comes to just what's going to happen for episode 11, so this one is going to be very interesting because it's different from... I feel like the intention is going to be very similar to the other versions, where, you know, Talay is a friend of the victim of a previous victim of the F4 or something like that. But I do feel like I don't know, I just hope that episode 11 delivers kind of like well, because again, I'm not the biggest fan of like, I don't really know what it is about Thyme's character. It's just not that well developed. All of his emotional scenes just doesn't have that punch. And I just feel really bad because in this particular moment, it's supposed to be like his big emotional moment. Like this, where he becomes vulnerable. But my issue with that scene would probably be the fact that, again, we never really see Thyme at that peak of being F4's leader. I mean, again, I think that's my main issue with this. So the impact of people plotting revenge towards him or anything like that, it just doesn't have enough punch as compared to like the other versions where Dao Mingse, Domyoji, they really have like they really were at the forefront of what's happening in Ningde and in Eitoku. So that's why they are the object of the revenge of these people. Whereas for Thyme, I mean, again, he gave that entire speech at the beginning, at the first couple of episodes, where he's saying that the F4 is basically just there leading everyone, but it's everyone's decision to do it. So why is the F4 like the target? I don't get. I mean, that entire build-up, again, the series kind of has a difficulty in terms of building up moments for it to have that impact that it should have as compared to like the other versions, because I feel like they didn't go ham with their depiction of the F4. I don't know, because of fear of how it's going to be portrayed as problematic. Maybe that's the problem. If there's another highlight that I would point out before I end today's video, it's definitely Kaning and Kavin's relationship. I really like how they're building it up in a way that it's not just an instant infatuation that Kaning's character had with Kavin after he saved her, but they're starting to really build up this sort of like friendship between them. So it kind of like makes sense for like there's this nice romantic energy, and I'm really much more invested in them as compared to Thyme and Gorya at this point, because of how much I just am not caring at all for like Thyme's character given the ups and downs of like the depiction of the character and just something like that. But then overall, I do feel like one highlight would definitely be the fact that he wasn't as much of an asshole to Lita as compared to like the other versions. So yeah, and like I feel like that's the barest minimum, especially when it comes to me caring about that character. But yeah, so with that said, so tell me down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on episodes 8, 9, and 10? I'm really curious about how they're going to do episode 11. I'm still not sure if I'm gonna do an episode review on that particular episode alone, or I'm just gonna wait out a couple of episodes as similar to what I did with this one. But yeah, we'll see. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel and you would want to hear more from me, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again soon in a new one. Bye!